Hey everyone. Virgo. Before Friday, I'm Anna. Uh, that's not decoration in the title. That's the reading. Okay, Virgo. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Like and subscribe because this is one you'll want to come back to. Here we go. Friday 13th. Write it somewhere. Not because the date is a deadline in the external sense. Nothing expires, nothing closes permanently. No door locks on Saturday that was open on Thursday. Write it because the date is a lens, a specific point in time through which what is currently diffuse becomes focused, through which what has been approaching from multiple directions simultaneously arrives at a single coordinate, yours, now, in this specific configuration of your life, and becomes, for the first time, legible as the single thing it actually is rather than the several things it has been appearing to be. Between now and Friday, something is being decided. Not by you necessarily, not in the sense of a decision you are being asked to make, though you may be asked to make one. In the larger sense of a decision that is already in process, that was put in motion before this week, and that is moving toward its conclusion in the specific, unalterable way of decisions that have reached the point in their development where the outcome is no longer uncertain but simply not yet expressed. The mechanism is running, the gears are turning. The result is already determined inside the machinery, even though the machinery has not yet produced the output. Friday is when the output arrives. Let's talk about time, not philosophically, mechanically. A clock does not create time, it measures it. It converts the continuous, invisible flow of something that has no inherent markers into a series of discrete, countable units that can be referenced, scheduled, used as coordinates for the organization of human activity. The clock is not the time, the clock is the instrument that makes the time navigable. That takes what would otherwise be a formless, directionless, impossible to organize flow and gives it the structure of before and after, earlier and later, the specific and the approximate. Without the clock, everything happens in an undifferentiated now. With it, things have positions relative to each other. Things can be anticipated. Things can be prepared for. Friday the 14th is a clock face in your life right now. It is not creating anything. It is making legible what is already in motion. It is the coordinate against which the movement of several things, things that have been moving in their separate directions, at their separate speeds, for their separate reasons, can be measured and found to be converging. Not converging because of the date. The date is the measurement, not the cause. The convergence has its own causes, its own momentum, its own reasons that have nothing to do with the calendar and everything to do with the specific, accumulated, finally arrived at its natural conclusion development of several situations that have been developing simultaneously and that are arriving at their conclusions in the same stretch of days. The clock says this is when. The situations say this is what. What is converging? Three things, distinct in their nature, related in their timing, connected at the root in ways that may not be fully visible yet, but that will become visible in the light of what Friday illuminates. The first is a communication, something that has been held in someone's chest, in someone's drafts, in the specific suspended state of something that was written and not sent, or thought and not spoken, or decided and not declared, that is moving from held to released, from interior to exterior, from the private world of one person's processing to the shared world of what exists between you. The holding has reached its limit. Not because the person holding it made a decision to release it, though a decision was involved, but because held things reach limits, the way held breath reaches limits, not through choice, through the accumulating impossibility of continuing. The communication is coming before Friday, possibly on Friday, in the form it takes when something has been held so long that the form it arrives in is not the polished, carefully constructed form the person intended, but the real form, the one that says what it means without the careful architecture of what they meant to say, which is, in its own way, better. The second thing converging is a shift in material conditions, not dramatic, not the sudden change that requires immediate response, but the kind of shift that is felt before it is seen, in the quality of a specific anxiety that has been present and begins to quiet, in the opening of an option that was closed, in the arrival of information that changes what is possible from here. Money may be involved, opportunity is involved. The specific, practical, this changes what I can do quality of a situation that was constrained becoming less constrained. Before Friday, something that has been tight begins to loosen. The third thing is internal, the least visible and the most significant. Something in the way you understand your own situation is about to clarify, not through an external event, but through the specific, quiet, accumulation tipping into realization process by which genuine understanding develops. Something you have been circling, approaching from different angles, half knowing without fully knowing something is about to resolve, from half knowing into actual knowing. The specific, irreversible, now I cannot unknow this quality of genuine realization. It will arrive not as revelation, but as recognition, as yes, that. That is what this has been. Interesting. The title calls this an interesting reading, and the word is doing something specific in that position. Not meaning this will be entertaining, meaning this will hold your attention. This will repay the attention it asks for. This is the kind of reading that is less about what happens and more about what the happening reveals about the situation, about the person in it, about the specific combination of what you have been building and what has been building toward you, that this particular stretch of days is going to make visible, is less than #0. 5 hashes greater than. Interesting readings are not always comfortable. Interesting means complex, means layered, means the surface is not the whole story, and the surface being addressed is going to require you to also address what is beneath it. Means that what arrives between now and Friday is not going to be simple, even if it is significant. Possibly, especially because it is significant. Significant things are rarely simple. They arrive carrying their complexity with them. requiring the person receiving them to hold multiple things simultaneously, the good and the complicated, the wanted and the demanding, the arrival and the question of what the arrival asks. You can hold multiple things simultaneously. This is not a given. It is a capacity that has been developed through the specific practice of having had to hold multiple things simultaneously before, of having been in situations that did not resolve cleanly into one feeling or one response, that required the tolerance for ambiguity. That is one of the most underrated human capabilities. You have been developing that tolerance for longer than it has felt productive, for longer than the development was producing visible results. The development was happening anyway. Friday requires it. Here is what to do with the days between now and Friday. Not much. This is intentional, not much is the right answer. The impulse, when told that something significant is approaching before a specific date, is to do things, to prepare actively, to position strategically, to take the actions that feel like they are moving toward the approaching significance in ways that will improve the conditions of its arrival. This impulse is understandable, and it is largely counterproductive. The things converging before Friday are not converging because of anything you are doing in the days between now and then. They are converging because of what you have done across the much longer period that preceded this week. That work is complete. You cannot add to it now in any meaningful way by doing things in the next 4 days. What you can do is be available. Available in the specific way of someone who has cleared the threshold, who is not blocking the arrival of what is coming with the specific, well meaning busyness of active preparation. Available to receive the communication when it comes, available to recognize the shift in material conditions when it begins, available to the realization when it arrives, rather than being so occupied with the production of the conditions for the realization that the realization itself passes unremarked. Stop producing. For 4 days, let things arrive. This is harder than it sounds for someone who has been doing the work. The work is the thing you know how to do. Stopping the work, trusting that the work has already been sufficient, allowing the harvest, rather than continuing to plant that requires a different quality of being than the one the work phase requires. It requires trust. The specific, evidence based, not blind trust of someone who can look back at what they have been doing and see clearly that it has been pointing somewhere, that it has been accumulating towards something, that the accumulation has reached the point where it simply needs to be received rather than added to. What Friday means after it has passed. Not in the predictive sense, what it is likely to have produced looking back from Saturday, in the structural sense of what a date like this does to the understanding of the period that preceded it. Because these dates, the ones that turn out to be coordinates rather than just calendar squares, do not only change what comes after them, they reinterpret what came before. They give meaning retroactively to the things that were happening in the days and weeks and months leading up to them. They make the pattern visible that was present all along, but that required the coordinate of their arrival to become legible. After Friday, the period before Friday will make more sense. The accumulation you have been doing will look in retrospect like preparation for this specific convergence rather than like the undirected continuation of existing effort. The things that seemed separate will reveal their connection. The things that seemed stalled will reveal the direction in which they were actually moving. The things you have been holding without knowing what you were holding them for will find their purpose in what Friday delivers. This is the nature of convergence points. They do not only create the future, they explain the past. And the explanation arrives as a specific, quiet, deeply satisfying form of clarity, not the dramatic clarity of revelation, but the practical clarity of a map suddenly making sense. Of a territory you have been moving through without full understanding, suddenly becoming navigable because the coordinate you were missing has been provided. Friday is the coordinate. The please in the title. It is not decoration either. Please watch this before Friday. The please is urgent in the specific way of something that knows timing matters, that knows the difference between receiving information before a significant moment and receiving it after is the difference between being prepared to meet something and being surprised by it in a way that requires recovery time before the meeting can actually happen. You are reading this before Friday, which means you are in the position of being prepared, of approaching the convergence with the awareness that something is converging, of meeting the communication, the material shift, the internal realization of meeting all three of these, not as things that arrived unexpectedly from nowhere, but as things that arrived on schedule, on the schedule that was always in the machinery, that the machinery was always going to produce on the date it was always going to produce it. The machinery has been running for your whole life. Every choice, every period of difficulty, every moment of almost arrival that turned into not yet all of it has been part of the mechanism. All of it has been contributing to the specific output that the mechanism is about to produce. The output is Friday. The output is the communication and the material shift and the internal realization arriving simultaneously in the specific, unrepeatable configuration of this moment in your becoming. The output is you standing in the days that follow Friday, understanding something you did not understand before, holding something you were not holding before, moving through your life from a position that is, however incrementally, however quietly, however much it will take time to fully inhabit different, better positioned, more clear, more solidly in possession of yourself than you were in the days before the machinery produced its output. Before Friday, Virgo, you have the days. Use them by not using them in the way you usually use them, by stopping the adding to and allowing the arriving of, by trusting that what is converging, and that your job now is not to produce the convergence, but to be present for it. By spending some portion of each remaining day before Friday in the specific, rare, uncomfortable luxury of simply being where you are in the actual present moment of your actual life, without the forward leaning urgency of someone perpetually en route to somewhere else. You are already somewhere. You have been arriving at Friday for longer than this week. The arrival is the culmination of a journey that required more of you than journeys usually require. That went through territory that was harder to navigate than you expected when you entered it. That produced in you, through the specific alchemy of difficulty and persistence and the refusal to stop moving even when moving felt like standing still, the specific irreplaceable version of yourself that is about to stand in the light of what Friday brings and receive it fully. That version of you. Um, Ready. Before Friday, already here.